Long ago, the evil Cablon ravaged the Copto planet, 1 light-year distant from the Algo star system. So the first thing the game tells us is that Gaiden doesn't take place in Algo, aka it doesn't really matter to the overall canon of the series. Phantasy Star, the series as a whole, is unique in that its setting is as much of a main character as any of the actual people. They put a lot of effort into characterizing the settings, even to the point where 3 treats its location as a major plot reveal. Gaiden, the term, means side story, and right away they're reinforcing that notion. This new planet was, quote, discovered by Alice and named Alice Land. You remember the main character from the first game? So apparently after being named the Queen of Algo, she just kind of left for some reason and founded this new society somewhere else. They say it's the year 813, and the original took place in the 300s, so it's been about 500 years since that game. You play as these 2 kids, or young adults, or whatever, who in an overly long cutscene find the furious action gamer beat up on the side of the road by some bandits. Overly long for what this game ends up being anyway, because it's just a traditional, no gimmicks, no fancy storytelling, no frills whatsoever, bare bones JRPG. Phantasy Star Gaiden is fully transparent. What you get in the first 15 minutes is what you're going to get for the rest of the game. It's very Dragon Warrior 1. The spells aren't quite as blunt as Hurt and Hurt More, but Bash comes pretty close. You're going to be traveling along, going from town to town, grinding every time you get to a new one to upgrade your equipment. You have multiple party members unlike in Dragon Warrior, but combat is still the most basic a turn-based system could possibly be. It's a small, simple JRPG. If you play the original Dragon Warrior every so often for fun, and I'm talking the NES or Famicom versions, not the remasters that increase EXP and gold drop rates. If you replay the OG of the JRPG every couple of years, then Phantasy Star Gaiden is a similar experience. I almost died on my first encounter. The game gives you all these starting items, but it doesn't automatically equip them. I guess that's a convenience this game does not have that the original Dragon Warrior did. You also buy spells from a store like in Final Fantasy, as opposed to learning them on Level Up, which means that you either need to be able to read a Japanese manual scan or trial and error which ones you actually want. You could also just be like me and buy whatever sounds like it might be useful. I ended the game with a small handful of spells, just kind of finding a couple that worked and sticking with them, because more spells means you need more money, and needing more money means more grinding, and this is already one of the most grind-heavy games that anyone could choose to play. Hardcore Gaming 101 claimed that, quote, progressing through PS Gaiden requires more grinding than in literally every other RPG released in the 90s. A strong claim, and in terms of percentages, as in percent of the total game spent grinding, Phantasy Star Gaiden might have a case. If this were rebalanced to where you'll always be naturally strong enough to survive by just doing fights as they come, this would be a 1-hour game. Maybe even less. My final time came in at almost 10, so that's a lopsided grinding to content ratio, I'd say. As Baby's first RPG, maybe it's a little too reliant on grinding, but I can imagine being in 1992, having a Game Gear and not a Game Boy or Lynx, and in that situation it wouldn't be terrible. Gaiden is the kind of thing you can whip out, grind for 5 or 10 minutes in between the cracks of your life, such as waiting on the school bus, or riding on a Japanese mass transit train. It's low stakes, you never really need to think about what you're doing, so as a mindless time waster, you could do worse. The encounter rate is incredible. I'm talking every step sometimes. It gives something like Shin Megami Tensei 1 some stiff competition, but at least you're safe in towns here. Phantasy Star Gaiden is a microscopic JRPG. Its only overworld is 63 tiles at its widest and 62 long at its tallest. Yes, I counted, and that's walkable space, not counting the border mountain tiles. There are only 7, or maybe 6.5 depending on how you count, towns, 8 dungeons, 7 of which are only 1 floor and smaller than any of the ones in 3, and only 4 of which I believe are mandatory to finishing the game. Hell, I didn't even go into 2 of them. You speak to people like in Phantasy Star 1 by just walking into them, and their dialogue is incredibly literal. The fan translation probably wasn't dealing with Shakespeare, but I would have liked to have seen a little personality, or at least not have made the hints so direct. I try to go into this mess of white pixels, and this guy says, "I can't allow you into the ancient ruins. By the way, my weakness is Ozo." And what a bizarre thing to say. Here's a little life advice. Don't go blurting out your weaknesses to whoever asks. Ouzo is an item, a beverage of the alcoholic variety, I would assume, that you can buy in a nearby town. So obviously that's what the game is trying to get you to do, but it's no Phantasy Star 1, which would carrot on a stick lead you to where you need to go. This game just flat out tells you, buy this man this drink. It's cute how if you enter towns from different locations on the world map, you show up inside them from different entrances. 2 towns become conjoined after you dry out a river separating them, which is genuinely cool. There's way more town variety than in Phantasy Star 3, and this game also has more save slots. Okay, I'm not gonna disparage 3 anymore, because am I kid-gloving this review of Gaiden? Yeah. If this game were called Phantasy Star 3 and were on the Genesis, of course I would be ripping it to shreds, but it's not and wasn't. It's a simple little grind RPG on the Game Gear, one that wasn't even important enough to get released over here. This changes my expectations quite a bit. You know that human resources meme? I'm that woman right now. Gaiden is entirely skippable, but the first 10 seconds of the game is an admittance of that. It's not trying to be anything more than it is. There's nothing misleading in Gaiden. There are a few quirks, which leads me to believe that they didn't think much of this game through, though. For example, you begin the game with this light pendant, which illuminates every cave, but you can still buy torches for some reason. You know, consumables, which do the exact same thing, whereas this pendant you start with lasts the entire game. It has unlimited uses, and you never are forced to, like, give it up or anything. Actually, now that I think about it, why even have lighting mechanics if they're simply going to give you the permanent solution from the onset? It feels redundant. Your heal spells don't scale with any kind of magic stat. They just recover a fixed amount of HP. And the first one you buy, the regular heal, only recovers 5. Which is worthless even at level 1. Another strange thing is that when you're at a lower level than the game intends you to be at, the largest barrier to you doing harm to the enemies isn't your attack or defense, it's your accuracy. Say the game wants you to be at level 10, but you're only at 9. Instead of being able to bullshit your way through fights slightly underleveled, you will just miss every single time. At a certain point, your accuracy will hit this invisible threshold, and it's like the game is now finally allowing you to fight the new monsters. Because before, you don't even stand a chance. You can't do anything because the game just won't let you hit them. And that's not just for physical attacks, magic misses too. It's like the game is forcing you to grind, and it's even more important than it would already be. There's no cheese methods to beat enemies because you can't hit them. When you acquire new party members, which happens a few times, they start so underleveled without exception, meaning that they're always absolutely worthless because even with the best equipment you could possibly give them, they just don't hit anything. Even Alice, you know, the fucking protagonist from the first game that you wake up from a cryogenic sleep, you'd think she would be a pretty decent party member, but no. She's worthless. Unless you want to spend way more time than is already necessary grinding her up, which Lord knows I didn't. My final Dragon Warrior 1 parallel is that eventually fighting random encounters becomes too resource intensive for it to be worth it. So I started running away, and thankfully Gaiden is generous with this. I'd say 4 out of 5 times fleeing works. Fighting the final boss, and oh, looks like I beat him? No, not like this. Ha! Sucker. Cablon's HP is full again.
Wow, what an asshole.
He'll just keep doing that if you let him, so what are you supposed to do? The walkthrough on Phantasy Star Cave doesn't seem to know. I did not manage to kill him by now. Maybe if you managed to do so, let me know. I'll try to beat him, but if you are quicker than me, Keep me informed. Okay, Phantasy Star Cave, here's what you're supposed to do. You get your fortune told, pick the most expensive option, then she gives you a pendant, the Cura. Use that on him and he won't be able to heal anymore. Kick his ass and... wow! You have brought us peace. I wonder, is it ever really safe? Don't worry about it, dear. This planet should be secure now. However, a greater evil is awakening. Oh, Alec, watch over Mina. I love you, Mina. Someday, we'll have a long talk. Meanwhile, I must try to save the Algo system from this new menace. And credits. Wait, credits? That's it? Hold on. What the fuck was she on about? A long talk about what? What is this new evil supposed to be? I know it's not Phantasy Star 4, or 3, or 2, or 1, or the text adventures, or just adventure. So I guess Alice had some off-screen adventures after all of this. So those were the Phantasy Star games on the Game Gear, and now after finishing them, I can see why nobody really talks about them. In fact, unless I missed something, I believe I'm the only person on all of English-speaking YouTube to review either one of them. So, they're just kind of filler games that are inconsequential to the overall canon of the series, and even on their own, they're really nothing noteworthy or special. But hey, I don't know that unless I try them out. I see that they released 2 Phantasy Star games on the Game Gear that nobody has ever talked about on YouTube, and I sure as shit want to be the guy who's talking about them. But anyway, that's all I got about them. Shout out to the patrons, shout out to William Robert Lee, shout out to the Furious Action Gamer for actually being in this game, and never trust anyone who needs a haircut. Goodbye.